let's put up this graphic. Today is primary day. The statistics that we're starting to see that we know from the voting at this point is pretty astonishing. 25% of the people who have early voted in this mayoral election have not voted in a Democratic primary since 2012. Now, there's a couple of different ways to read this. I suspect that doesn't mean that you have a bunch of people who checked out in 2012 and this is the first time. I suspect it's an indication of how young the electorate is. Something like 50% of the people who voted so far are under the age of, what was the number? Is that in this? Put this statistic up.
Which one?
25 to 34.
Early voters by age. You will see that like 50%, maybe more. 25 to 34-year-olds have cast the most early ballots. Now,
It's 47% under 44.
okay, that's amazing. Under the age of 44. The other, let me just do some quick math here. 12 years ago, those 25-year-olds would be 12. 12 years ago, those 34-year-olds would be 22.
Don't I know it?
Probably did not vote in the primaries. I mean, this is what we're seeing is new voters coming in to vote in this primary. Never mind new voters early voting, new voters coming in to vote in this primary. That is not good for Andrew Cuomo. But it is good for humanity broadly. I mean, that may be a little bit expansive, but remember the big deal that was made about Eric Adams. Now, to be clear, there is also a primary election this year, so this is not going to be a cakewalk for Zohran Mamdani if he wins the primary.
The general, you mean? There's going to be a general.
There's going to be a general election this year that is going to be heavily contested. But that said, there is an opportunity for New Yorkers to do something very, very important in at least having this guy win the Democratic primary. Mamdani and Brad Lander, who were early cross endorsers relative to this race, showed up last night on the Colbert report. And I have a feeling that regardless which one of these two wins, and Lander, I think by all accounts, has no real opportunity to win at all. I think he would probably concede that at this point in, no, you don't do that publicly, but the polling is such that Mamdani has the only real chance to beat Cuomo. But of course, in ranked choice voting, you can vote Lander first, Mamdani second, and that's why they cross endorse, or you can do vice versa. Just do not put Cuomo on that ballot. They went on Colbert last night, and it was really interesting where this conversation went and how quickly it went there. I'll give you my thoughts on it in a second.
Why do you think this particular race has become a countrywide story?
I think in some ways because it's a referendum on where our party goes. What we're talking about is a race that has now seen the most funded super PAC in New York City's municipal history. A race that is, one that billionaires and corporations want to buy.
Pause it for 1 second. I just want to put a fine point on that. $25 million worth of PAC money. $25 million worth of PAC money in the Democratic primary. The only silver lining I can tell you about that is the guys who spend these billionaires' money, they spend it for themselves. They get a 10 to 15% VIG on every ad they place. And so they're going for the most expensive way of expending that money, as opposed to putting people knocking on doors. Mamdani had knocked on something like 1.5 million doors in New York City. It's insane. It's an insane amount of people power. But I just go back a little bit.
Seen the most funded super PAC in New York City's municipal history, a race that is, one that billionaires and corporations want to buy. And this is a tale that we're seeing across this country, where it's a battle of organized money versus organized people. And ultimately, it's a question for our own party of how do we move forward? Do we move forward with the same politicians of the past, the same policies of the past that delivered us this present, or do we move forward with a new generation of leadership, one that is actually looking to serve the people?
Well, Despite this being a New York City race, foreign affairs have become part of it, partly because this is such a multicultural city. And so I'll ask the same question to both of you. I'll start with you, Mr. Lander. Does the state of Israel have the right to exist?
Pause it. How deep into the interview is this?
This is 4 minutes. The first few minutes were them talking about cross-endorsing each other, and then the minute and a half we just saw.
I want you to think about New York City and all of the issues that would face a potential mayor. And I can assure you that impacting policy regarding Israel is so low on the list. And even if you did that setup, New York City is an international city. It also happens to be the home of the largest amount of billionaires, largest amount of millionaires. It may tie into what Mamdani was saying about money and politics. But put that aside. It is also, I would imagine, has the most amount of immigrant population in the country and diversity of immigrants. As you may know, one of the big news stories over the past 5 or 6 months has been about immigrants and immigration and ICE and court cases. The only thing I can think is, because Colbert's politics are usually better than this. And so the only thing I can think about is that it's quite possible, and certainly in a show like this, that the candidates come on and say, ask us about Israel. Because if I'm going on this show, I am going on the Late Show. I think I called it Colbert Report. I'm going on the Late Show because I want to talk to old people who are like me. And I mean this specifically, like my age, late 50s, 60s, 70s. That's who watches these shows. And I want to make them feel comfortable with Mamdani, because Andrew Cuomo has been putting out on these same airwaves over and over again, not a friend of Israel, not a friend of Israel. And so that's what I think is going on here, as creepy as it is. But let's hear their answers, because I'm on bated breath. Are we going to launch an invasion of Israel?
I support the vision of Israel as a Jewish and democratic state. Mr. Mamdani, same question. Does the state of Israel have the right to exist?
Yes, like all nations, I believe it has a right to exist and a responsibility also to uphold international law.
Okay, well, let's talk about the elephant in the room, is that there are many people in New York, even people who would support your candidacy otherwise, who don't want to support you because of the Jewish community's fear of the true and rising anti-Semitism, not only around the world, but in this country and shamefully in New York, which is the largest Jewish population of any city other than Tel Aviv in the whole world. And they are worried. They're very upset by some of the things that you've said in the past, and they're afraid that your mayorship would actually lead to increased anti-Semitism, that they believe that would be more dangerous for them. What do you say to those New Yorkers who are afraid that you wouldn't be their mayor, that you wouldn't protect them?
I know where that fear is coming from. It's a fear that is based upon the horrific attacks we've seen in Washington, D.C., in Boulder, Colorado. It's all
the way from Jews will not replace us to today.
And it's a fear that I hear also from New Yorkers themselves. Just a few days after the horrific war crime of October 7th, a friend of mine told me about how he went to his synagogue for Shabbat services, and he heard the door open behind him, and a tremor went up his spine as he turned around, not knowing who was there and what they meant for him. I spoke to a Jewish man in Williamsburg just months ago who told me that the door he left unlocked for decades is now one that he locks. And ultimately, this is because we're seeing a crisis of anti-Semitism. And that's why at the heart of my proposal for a Department of Community Safety is a commitment to increase funding for anti-hate crime programming by 800%. Because to your point, anti-Semitism is not simply something that we should talk about, it's something that we have to tackle. We have to make clear there's no room for it in this city, in this country, in this world.
And no justification for violence of any kind?
No, there is no room for violence in this city, in this country, in this world. And what I have found also from many New Yorkers is an ability to navigate disagreement. I remember the words of Mayor Koch, who said, if you agree with me on 9 out of 12 issues, vote for me. 12 out of 12, see a psychiatrist. And I had an older Jewish woman come up to me at B'nai Jeshurun in a synagogue many months ago after a Democratic Club forum. And she whispered in my ear, I disagree with you on one issue. I'm pretty sure you know which one it is. And I agree with you on the others, and I'm going to be ranking you on my ballot. And I say this because I know there are many New Yorkers with whom I have a disagreement about the Israeli government's policies. And also, there are many who understand that that's a disagreement still rooted in shared humanity. Because the conclusions I've come to, they are the conclusions of Israeli historians like Amos Goldberg. They are echoing the words of an Israeli Prime Minister, Ehud Olmert, who said just recently, what we are doing in Gaza is a war of devastation. It is cruel, it is indiscriminate, it is limitless, it is criminal killing of civilians. These are the conclusions I've come to.
Stephen, can I? Sure, please. And by the way,
Pause it for 1 second. Now, I will say, this is pretty masterful stuff because he is not backing down from his positions. And he is basically just explaining, how he's trying to provide a permission structure for older Jews who remember Ed Koch, incidentally. He's not talking to anybody under my age by bringing up Ed Koch. He is literally just talking to a specific cohort. All right, let's just play another minute because I want to hear Lander here. But I'm surprised that this was brought up in this, and can only imagine that this was invited by the candidates. It may not have been. And if not, people just listening to that question when we cut it off thought dude, you got to let it run out because he's obviously doing a joke.
Before you answer, I want to say if we're not able to fit everything in this interview on the broadcast, we will put the whole thing up online unedited. Okay, go ahead.
So look, I'm a proud Jewish New Yorker, raising 2 Jewish kids here is the joy of my life. I'm the highest ranking Jewish elected official in New York City government. I'm nervous about rising anti-Semitism, and also I believe in the humanity and the human rights of Palestinians, and I know that it is possible. I support that vision of Israel as a Jewish and democratic state, but I hate what the Netanyahu government is doing in Gaza. And I've been saying that a long time. And look, no mayor is going to be responsible for what happens in the Middle East, but there is something quite remarkable about a Jewish New Yorker and a Muslim New Yorker coming together to say, here's how we protect all New Yorkers, Jewish New Yorkers and Muslim New Yorkers are not going to be divided from each other. We build a city where you have affordable housing and good schools and safe neighborhoods for everyone.
Well, Mr. Mamdani, I'm just curious, how do you think, you'd be the first Muslim mayor of New York, how do you think you could build a bridge of understanding between the significant Muslim population here in the city and the significant Jewish population here in the city? How do you think you could lower tension?
I think by foregrounding that humanity And in many ways, that's the most New York City thing we can do, because for so many of us who've grown up in this city, difference is something that we celebrate. It's something that we know is actually a part of the fabric of this place that we call home. And many years ago, I was the campaign manager of a Jewish candidate for state senate, and I took him to a mosque in Bay Ridge. And after he gave his speech at Friday prayers, an older Palestinian man came over to him, and he looked at him and he said, "Cousins." And I think that there is this possibility of building a shared life in our city, because ultimately that is the story of New York City. It's a shared life of people from across the world, and it's one that we know, even in the language of the hostage families themselves, everyone for everyone. We are tied together as one.
Well, we have to take a quick break.
I mean, that's impressive stuff. That's really impressive stuff. And we're going to see this. I mean, look, the bottom line is, what I also find interesting, some of the stuff that Cuomo has been doing or not doing reads to me like he's already sort of thinking, I'm going to have to run in the general as not a Democrat. And this appearance also has that feel of Mamdani sort of like understanding, if I win this primary, I'm going to have to deal with this in the general. So I might as well do it now. And because I think he understands he can't get, if he can't sell this in the primary, he's definitely not going to be able to sell it in the general. And as time goes on, he's going to be even better at this. I mean, I don't know how much room there is, frankly, to get that much better, but it's really, really impressive.
And good on Lander, and then also Blake and Myrie, some of the other candidates, for going against Cuomo. And, this is how this should look.
Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.